Well, welcome everybody to ImpactChat. It's so good to see you all here tonight. And I've just lost my notes here. And here I've got it. It's really a pleasure to have you all here for us, with Sue Zacharin being in conversation with Lidia Thorpe. Oh my, two powerhouse women talking. You will be blown away by both of them, but especially, and sorry Sue, but especially with Lidia. My name is Kathy Kaplan and I have the privilege of being President of Impact. We make a difference to Victorian women and children fleeing extreme violence at home. While we may be a charity, we don't give charity. What we do is give gifts, services and hope with dignity. And we give dignity with gifts, services and hope. If you're able to, please consider giving a tax-deductible donation. I'm currently at my home, which is on the land of the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. Wherever you are, either on the same land as me or in another one of the many traditional lands, I want to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the first peoples of Australia, the traditional owners of the lands and waters throughout Australia, the lands and waters on which we're privileged to work and play, the lands and waters which have never been ceded. I recognise their people's continuing connection to land, waters and community, and I pay our respects to their peoples, their cultures, their languages, and to their elders, past, present and emerging. The beautiful artwork behind me was created by Rachel Sarah. She's an Indigenous artist who originates from the Bunda people in the Goreng country in Queensland. This design was adopted by the Queensland government to represent their family violence strategies. It reflects the needs of people, regardless of race, nationality or culture, all joining together in conversation and positive action. The design represents a clear and focused pathway that begins as the dispersed energy of many, that fuses to channel clarity, momentum and strength. It shows the power of unity and simplicity that can and must evolve from complexity. The hands depict the journey of a child, connected to and supported by structures that nurture and guide that child. And the woven orange line acknowledges that culture, family, and learning from the past is necessary to act in the present and to grow for the future. I feel this beautiful design also aptly illustrates Impact's aims and objectives. I want to remind you that we are recording this session and it will be available on Facebook and on our webpage if you'd like to revisit the session or encourage anyone who wasn't able to make it here tonight to view it at a later date. Please post your questions in the chat box and Sue will be monitoring them to include in her conversation with Lidia. And so now, Sue, I'm handing it over to you to host tonight's chat and to introduce Lidia. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm absolutely honoured tonight to welcome Lidia Thorpe, a proud Gunnai and Gunditjmara woman, a mother of 3 and a grandmother, from a family of community activists. Lidia was the first Aboriginal woman in Victorian Parliament as the MP for Northcote, the first federal Aboriginal representative for the Greens and the first Aboriginal Senator for Victoria. And all this a lot younger than most of us. Welcome, Lidia. Where's Lidia?
I'm here. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Kathy, for your introduction. I'm really honoured to be invited to have a yarn with you all tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Lidia, you've described yourself as a grassroots activist. Your mother, Marjorie Thorpe, your uncle, Robbie Thorpe, your sister, Marika Jonas, they're all activists, or have been. Your great-grandmother, Edna Brown, established the Aboriginal Funeral Benefit Fund. Can you tell us a bit about why she did that?
Well, in the late 60s, early 70s, a lot of Aboriginal people were coming from all around the country to Melbourne, but in particular Fitzroy, And that's where a lot of our people lived and worked and died. And so a lot of our people were being buried as paupers in those days. So, you know, no ceremony and no real, you know, respectful way to say goodbye, and no one was ever there. So Nan set up the Aboriginal Funeral Fund to enable a respectful you know, send off, so our people were buried with dignity rather than being buried as paupers. And so many Aboriginal families benefited from that. And Nan used to run raffles and have cabarets, and the cabarets used to be at the Collingwood Town Hall. I was a kid at the time when she was running those cabarets, but it's something that we remember, you know, and remember for the good times of coming together and celebrating, but also raising money for a good cause.
Then your grandmother, Elma Thorpe, who I understand you have her middle name, her name is your middle name, helped to establish the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service. And you were one of the first babies to attend, is that right?
Yeah, well, Nan was very instrumental in setting up the first Aboriginal Health Service in Victoria, but she also worked with the National Aboriginal and Islander Health Organisation in those days, which is now what they call NACCHO, the peak body for Aboriginal health in this country. Before it was NACCHO, it was called NAHO. And Nan was a part of that. So Nan actually worked to assist other communities around the country to set up their Aboriginal health services. The first Aboriginal health service was set up in Redfern in Sydney. We were the second, and the third was in Gippsland in Bairnsdale, actually. So Nan, our service in Victoria was set up in September in 1973, and I was born in August 1973. So I was lucky that I had a safe place to go to as a baby, where most of my family worked, and all of my community were always around. So, you know, it was set up at around the same time as the Black Panther movement. So it was not just a health service, it was our political voice in this country. And it was a place where it wasn't just for Aboriginal people who were poor, people who were homeless, who weren't Aboriginal could also come and get a feed and get clothes if they needed it, and see a doctor if they needed it. So it was about caring for the community who needed it the most.
So you've grown up with this level of community participation and beyond immediate community and involvement. It's been all around you all your life with your family. Was there any overt expectation of you to continue this or to become involved with this level of community service?
Well, being the eldest of, I've lost count, it's about 90 cousins. On both sides, my dad's non-Aboriginal and my mum's Aboriginal. So on both sides of my families, I'm the eldest. So I just got given the job of hosting the birthday parties and being the babysitter and just being the person that had to take the lead in the family amongst all my little cousins. And I suppose the struggle when I was young, I just had this conversation around me all the time. It was normal. So having dinner and having family barbecues, it was all politics. So I'd never heard anything different. And I suppose, yeah, absolutely, it shaped me. And watching how, particularly the matriarchs of my family, and we mentioned two of those, but also my mother, how they had all these other hidden struggles that no one ever talked about, particularly family violence, never spoken about. And for them to continue to fight and resist and work with our community and for our people is just an incredible example of their resilience and their fight to continue, regardless of what we all deal with personally. You know, you just do it for your community.
Fair enough. But you were at the same time, you were growing up in the Collingwood Housing Commission flats. So were you seeing this need extended as well? Because I would imagine about this time we would have had, in the early 70s, we would have had immigrants coming in as well. And were you seeing other communities that needed this help and support as well as your own?
Look, from my experience and from what I remember, is that we weren't black, white, or multicultural. We were poor.
Mm.
We were poor and we were struggling, and we connected on that level. It wasn't about our background. It was who could play basketball, and I was pretty good at that, I must say, in my early days. But it was about being poor and just making sure that everyone was okay and everyone looked after one another, and if no one had lunch, then we'd share. So it wasn't about culture or multicultural or religion or anything. It was just the fact that we were poor and we were struggling, and that's how we stuck together. It was a real community.
In your maiden speech to Parliament, you described being bullied and harassed at school, and mentioned that you and your cousin were the only Aboriginal students at your school, and that the abuse was really particular, which is even more horrendous. But you said that the teachers bullied you too. How did that affect you?
It made me dislike the teachers. It made me dislike school. It made me disengage. It wasn't a safe place for me. It wasn't a place that I enjoyed getting up in the morning to go to, because I knew what I'd have to face. I was very proud as an Aboriginal young woman, and I didn't want to hide the fact that I was proud to be black and where I come from. And as soon as I would mention that, or a film would come up, or some subject in a class that related to Aboriginal people, there were always those comments, including from the teachers. So that's why I left school at 14. I just didn't, it just wasn't the place for me. And now my daughter, my year 7 daughter, goes to that same school, which is now one of the most progressive schools in Melbourne. I won't name it, but yeah, she's doing really, really well, and they've come a long, long way.
That's wonderful to hear. Okay, so you worked for a few years. You had your first baby at 17. When did you move down to the Lakes Entrance area?
Good question. So Lakes Entrance was around, so my son was born in 91. My mother was the manager at Lake Tyers Aboriginal Trust, which is an old mission reserve where she still lives today. So I used to take my son there often. So I would say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was in Gippsland. And yeah, it was a stark difference to Melbourne in terms of relations with local Aboriginal people, and it's where I had my 2 daughters. So my eldest daughter is 19 or about to be 20, and my youngest is 12. Turning 13. So I had both my daughters on my country, Gunnai country, at the Bairnsdale Hospital, which I was a bit nervous about, because you hear all these stories about country hospitals, but I tell you what, it was just, it was like being in a private hospital. It was just such a beautiful experience.
Then you threw yourself into life down there, and this is where the netball comes into its own. I understand there was a lot of administrative involvement, but there was also was it playing captain coach at one stage and winning grand finals and all sorts of wonderful things happening. See, that school would have been so sad when you left. and took your abilities with you. But you were also president, I think, the Lakes Entrance Basketball Association. So you're getting into community involvement, and you were on the school council for the Now and Hour Primary School. So we're starting to see a spreading out of quasi-local government, aren't we?
Well, might I add that it's also Darren Chester's electorate, Lakes Entrance, who's, if you don't know Darren Chester, he's a minister in the current government, and he's a good friend of mine. And I coached his daughter in netball, and he coached my daughter in surf lifesaving. And I'll never forget the day that I chased him down the beach at a surf lifesaving carnival. It was 26th of January. So, you know, I had my flag, and so I chased him down the beach with my flag. I said, "Come on, Darren, let's do a photo together." And, you know, we just have lots of fun. But, you know, yeah, I suppose that's just an example of how, you know, we connect as people regardless of our politics, which is important.
Which is very important. Were you in any way involved? Your mother was at the Lake Tyers community then? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Were you involved with that at all at that stage?
Yeah, I used to manage the training centre at Lake Tyers. It was probably my shortest job in history. And that was because I just felt quite constrained by the TAFE system. And after door knocking every house at Lake Tyers and hearing from the people about what they wanted to do and what they wanted to see the training centre doing for them, I was just faced with a lot of blockages. People wanted their own radio station, people wanted to do art courses, people wanted to do tours on the lake, but at the time TAFE wanted to do things that no one really wanted to do, and it fell down, and it was a bit of a sad time actually, because the community were very excited about me coming in, but the bureaucracy just killed it off, and the place is still like that. So. But I will tell you one quick story, and that is when the Now and Hour Primary School would have their sports day, they do their cross country. I said, well, you can't just go and do a cross country, you kids. You've got to practice. You've got to train for that. I said, so I want you all to meet me at the training centre every day as soon as you get off the school bus, and you turn up, and I'll start training you. And kids would turn up with no shoes on or gum boots or whatever they were wearing. And we would run around the whole mission. And people would come out of their houses waving to us because I was so happy to see the kids training for the cross country. And we'd stop at the cemetery every time, and I'd say, right, this is a time where you've got to go and pay your respects to your people, have a drink of water, have a rest, say hello, and then we'll keep running. And the kids would just spread out to all the graves and have a moment and have a drink of water, and then we go running off again. It was incredible.
Okay, and then life implodes in slow motion. Your marriage falls apart, you experience terrible domestic violence, you're advised to declare bankruptcy. You've got nothing, and you return to Melbourne, back to living in Housing Commission accommodation. Who and what helped you through this terrible time in your life? Let's start with who.
There is a slight correction there. I didn't come back to public housing because what saved me from that situation is I was offered a job whilst I was in Lakes Entrance. I was working in local government. I was working for the East Gippsland Shire Council. And I was offered a job at the Municipal Association of Victoria, which is the peak body for local government.
Yeah.
And so I could afford to rent. So I rented in the same street that my daughter went to school. So whatever was going to make it easy in my life, I did.
Can I ask her a side question there? Was she always late? Because my experience is that the kid who lives closest to the school is always late.
She was late sometimes, not always, because she's a bit different, my baby daughter. She hates being late for anything.
Okay.
So she's much more organised than anyone in the family. But yeah, look, it was a difficult time, but it wasn't the first time I'd experienced violence from a man either. I was very young when I first experienced that with my first partner. And I never thought that I'd experience it again, especially with someone that I decided to marry. So yeah, life did implode, and you know, it affected the business. There was a lot of decisions that I didn't partake in or didn't know about. And I was advised to go bankrupt. It's the last thing I wanted to do. And the first thing, you know, I didn't worry about the house. I was worried about the Aboriginal community boards I was on, because I said, I can't be on a board, you know, and they said, you're going to lose your house. I said, yeah, but, you know, I need to be on this board. We're doing really good stuff. And so I suppose I took the view of I still have my mental health, my children are safe, and my house is materialistic. Everything I lost was material, and one day I can get that again. You know, I just thought, rebuild. I love the op shop. I've lived off op shop furniture all my life. It's nothing, you know, it wasn't, I wasn't held back by that. And the violence that happened in that house, I was kind of happy to see it go, because I couldn't live in it after what had happened. So I started back in Melbourne. It was difficult after 15 years being on country and living in a country town and doing some really good stuff, to then coming back to Melbourne was a big change, and you know, it was change for my kids. But my matriarchs did it, and who helped me? Who helped me was, I suppose, my kids. You know, just their strength, and you got to be strong for them. You can't show all your weakness to them. Well, that's what I felt at the time, and that I just had to keep life as normal as I possibly could, so that I don't allow this vicious cycle to continue. I wanted to show my youngest daughter that we can live a life without violence, and I needed to show her that in a way that made her feel safe.
Okay. So you go to university because you haven't got enough to do. This is obviously the fact. You don't have enough to do. Did you go back as a mature age student, or did you have to, you did? Okay. That's hard. That's very, very hard. What did you decide you wanted to study?
I went into a commerce degree firstly. That was, in fact, I did that whilst I lived in Lakes Entrance, and I'd travel to Warn Ponds near Geelong. And I would travel with my then 2-year-old, and that was difficult. So I only passed one subject in that degree, which was business law. And then when I reattempted, I did public policy, because I love governance, and I wanted to know how policy was being made, and how decisions were being made, and how they were being formulated. So I got a degree in public policy, which is certainly, you know, I didn't think I'd be sitting here right now as a senator. So that's certainly going to, well, it's already been helping me along my journey.
Okay. So you're doing public policy. Is this when you actually think to yourself that you're becoming a political person? Never did I think that I'd be a politician or a political person. I mean, hang on.
political person I would say I've always been in terms of Black politics. I've always fought for our rights and our land and our water. But in terms of a politician in Parliament, never in my wildest dreams did I think that would happen, or did I want that to happen. It just happened, and I always say to myself, why did this happen? And the only reasons I can think of is because I questioned so much. I questioned the decisions, I questioned the system, and I see all of these injustices, and you just do what comes natural, and you get called a troublemaker and a wrecker and you're divisive, and you get all these labels put on you. But when you check on, you know, your old people and you say, Nan, you know, I'm saying this, is this okay? And I speak to my elders and aunties and family and community, and they say, yeah, you keep saying it, you keep saying it. I was like, okay, I'll keep saying it. And this is where it's taken me.
This would be a perfect time for me to remind everybody that if they would like to ask questions of you, all they need to do is put them down and we'll see them. And if they're appropriate to what we're talking about, we'll bring them in. If not, we can save them till the end, you know. But please, everybody, if you've got questions, let us know and we'll start addressing them.
So can I just add though, you know, hearing about impact and the work of impact, that would have been incredible for me in the times that I felt that I was alone and that I was trying to escape those situations, and you know, you just feel like no one cares and you feel like you're in this situation, no one else is in this situation but you. And you really struggle, and to hear that, you know, you've got all these volunteers and you're doing these packs that make people feel good, that is incredible. What that would do for a woman in that situation is incredible. So I just want to say that because I've heard so much about it, and I think that it's so important.
I can tell you that the sad part of doing the Bags of Love every time we do them, which is Christmas and Mother's Day, is that the numbers grow every year. Now, that's partly down to our ability to generate more bags, but it's also because the demand, unfortunately, is greater. But it is the most incredible thing to see 400, 500 people, including kids, all working together to fill those bags. It takes about, on the actual day, it takes about 3 hours, and it's pure beehive. And we all come out emotionally exhausted, but just so happy. It's a fantastic experience, and it's lovely to hear that you can articulate how someone on the receiving end of one of those bags would feel. So thank you. That's really great. Now, one of the things I've been reading about a lot about you, and obviously, but one of the things that I really would love to hear you talk about tonight is that you're a passionate advocate for treaty with your people, and you reject the Uluru Statement. And I would really love you to explain why, if you would do that, please.
Okay. Thank you. So Australia is the only Commonwealth country without a treaty with its First People. We are part of the colonial project, right? So when the colonisers, when Cook came over, he invaded the country, there was no agreement, there was no acceptance or agreement between Aboriginal people and the people who came here on those boats in 1778. So there was no negotiation and no agreement to occupy these lands that we'd been occupying for thousands and thousands of generations. And so a treaty, I believe, and a lot of my community believe, is a mechanism that will bring this country together. We see what happens on the 26th of January. It's very divided. We need to work through that and the pain of that. You know, when we say it's invasion or when we say it's a day of mourning, then we want Australians to understand what that feels like for us when we see people celebrating and drinking and dancing and thinking it's great. So I think treaty is a mechanism that will unite this country, but we need to do it. It's going to take some time because people need to understand what treaty can do, but also we want Black and white people to have input into a treaty. So I think that it should be local government based and having local conversations with local communities about what they want in a treaty. You know, what do they want about, I don't know, for example, on my country, Gunnai country, we have a coal-fired power station, or a few of them in the Latrobe Valley. I've already put on the table in terms of the Victorian treaty that, you know, we need to close these coal-fired power stations, but we don't want people to lose jobs. So we need to make sure people have got jobs before they close and things like that. So local communities should decide for themselves what is going to make their community more equal, because every community has this massive divide, and you only need to go to Gippsland to see that. There's poor black fellas, majority in that community, and the non-Aboriginal people are just, you know, profiting and enjoying life, while there's absolute you know, the oppression is real on the ground in a lot of our communities. So I believe that a whole community would be willing to have a conversation about how they can improve themselves as a community and input that into a treaty. I mean, I'm not going to say what a treaty is going to look like, because I think it needs to be that's for the people to decide. It's got to be from the bottom up rather than this top down approach, because we have the solutions in our local communities. Now, why I think that that's different to the Uluru Statement, and I'm talking specifically about the voice to Parliament. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the Uluru Statement, it does talk about a makarrata, which is you know, an agreement-making instrument, but I think we should go a bit harder on that and go for treaty. The Uluru Statement calls for truth-telling, which I 100% agree with. I think we need to start with truth-telling. And in terms of going into the Australian Constitution, I just don't think that we can do that before we've had a treaty. Mm. It's kind of like, you know, the colonisers came, they put this law onto our law, the oldest law on the earth, and they say, righto, guys, this is it. This is your new law that you have to abide by. Here's our constitution. Here's our law book, and we want everyone to fit into that. We need a treaty first. I just don't agree with going into the constitution until we've had a treaty. If we have a voice in Parliament, or a voice to Parliament, which I'm hearing that it's looking more like an advisory body. How many advisory bodies do we need? You know, I'm sick of advisory bodies. I think through a treaty, we can have designated seats in Parliament, like the Waitangi Treaty. You know, we can get real stuff done. So that's why I'm not saying I don't agree with the Uluru Statement. I'd like the sequence to change. I'd like it to be truth, treaty, voice, not truth, voice, treaty. And that's a very big difference in sequence. And yeah, and just quickly, John Howard did the reconciliation movement 20 years ago. He put a lot of money, his government put a lot of money towards that. It was the most comprehensive consultation this country has ever seen. Why can't we do that again? It's 20 years later. 20 years ago, the outcome was that this country was too racist to reconcile. I don't think we're that bad anymore. I think that it's time now that we have that conversation again and we see what people want. If people want to go in the Constitution, then I'll be happy for that to happen. But we haven't heard from the people.
Sounds fair to me. I'm abbreviating something you said, but you referred to racism, as in against Aboriginal people, that is rife, but it's not blatant. It's undercover racism, an unconscious bias that people have. So if I can cheer when the coroner at the inquest into the death of Tanya Day announces that one of her terms of reference is going to be systematic racism, causing actions leading to the death of Miss Day, and she subsequently finds that one party had acted motivated by unconscious racism, if I can be pleased that that's happened, was it some kind of small recognition for you?
It was a moment. Yes, it was good to hear that there was systemic racism, but nothing's happened as a result. You know, it's a bit like saying sorry. I mean, what's the point of saying sorry when we've got more children being taken away than at the stolen generation? So it's okay to acknowledge that these things, oh yeah, okay, it's systemic racism. Oh yeah, we're going to say sorry about that too, but we're going to continue it anyway. That's the overt racism, I think, that we need to call out and ask for action from what they are obviously admitting that's gone wrong. You know, I'm tired of this. I've been marching since I was 5. I'm 47 now, and I don't want my grandchildren to inherit the struggle. I want them to inherit some hope and some future and one where they can prosper and be free. So yeah, look, there is hidden racism. I'd rather, you know, the outright racist, and we know who those people are, particularly in the place where I'm going. We've seen a lot of that. I'd rather that, to be honest, than the ones that you don't really know. You know, they're trying to be your friend, but in fact, a lot of the work they're doing is absolutely racist. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot of that, and we're seeing that in terms of incarceration. We're seeing that employment, education. You know, it's right through the system, and we need systemic change.
When here's the question. You say you never saw yourself as a politician, and yet the question is, did politics found you, or did you find politics? And then we take the extension of that, and the question is, did the Greens find you, or did you find the Greens?
Labor found me. And I went to dinner with Labor, and I had cups of teas with Labor. I went to Emily's List, and, you know, I was friends with some Labor politicians, but I didn't know what they stood for. You know, I was dealing with so much other stuff that I didn't look at what they stood for. So when I did, I was thinking, oh, no, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And then I met a Greens politician, the first politician. I was the Victorian NAIDOC committee chair at the time, and running the march, the NAIDOC march in Melbourne. And a Greens politician rocked up, and I said, "What? We've never had a politician come to a rally like this before. Who is this? I want to know this person." And so we made friends, and that was Alex Patel. And yeah, she just said, "You know, you should get into politics." And I said, "What? Really?" And I said, "You know what? I'd love to run in a pre-selection, just to know more about the Greens, just because they grill you like, you know, you have so many people asking you so many questions about Greens policy, and I had no idea about Greens policies, but I've always learnt things the hard way, and usually it's sink or swim with me, and that's what I did. I mean, I went to a couple of meetings, I tested it out, and I found that it was a really nice group of people and caring. They all cared about the same things as I did. So I ran in the pre-selection, ran for Northern Metro actually in the first time. So that was against Samantha Ratnam and the leader of the Victorian Greens. And at the same time that I was running for that pre-selection, very sadly, and it was when Fiona Richardson passed away. So it was very unfortunate to run in a by-election based on, her passing, because I know that she did some good work as well. And so I ran in that by-election. I was told we wouldn't win. So I thought, fine, I'm happy with that. I just want to have a go. This is great. I'm loving the buzz of it. And we won. So I had an anxiety attack and had to be walked around the room and told about mindfulness and told to breathe because we'd won. I said, we weren't meant to win this. And they said, we know, just shut up, just read your winning speech and take a breath and walk the room. And yeah, so I just we did not expect to win that, and we did. And then I got a taste of it and thought, wow, okay, I can really make a difference here, and I'm not going to give up.
Good. So it's off to Canberra.
Yes, quarantine starts Sunday. I've got to find someone to look after my dog and someone to look after my kid. And buy a heap of food, and no exercise.
Just completely as an aside, what breed is that monster that is going to be as big as you when he grows up?
So that dog, a friend of mine was in a terrible family violence situation, and that dog got beaten by the guy that beat the wife, and so, we didn't want a dog, to be honest. We were happy just, doing what we were doing. And this person had nowhere for this dog to go. And I said, look, we'll look after it for a little while until we find another home. And it's a Neapolitan Mastiff, which is the Harry Potter dog. It grows to 70 kilo. And we have fallen in love, and we will never let her go because it's beautiful.
She is absolutely beautiful, but by gosh, she's going to be a big girl.
I'm going to interrupt there. Sue, you need to tell about your dog.
Oh, no, not now.
It's very, very naughty.
Oh. So it's on Facebook, Lydia, I have apparently been entertaining quite a few people with stories of this dog, and it's called Today the Very Hungry Australian Cattle Dog Ate, and then there's a list, and people have been ringing me and going, oh, it's very funny, and I'm going, yeah, it's not funny, it's true. So I love your dog, and I hope to gosh it doesn't eat as many things as our dog does, but I know what you mean. I would not swap her for the world. She's beautiful, but
she broke my finger.
I wondered what that was.
She broke the tip of my finger because she's so strong, and I tried to grab her collar as she was running after this other dog at the dog park, and it just snapped the top of my finger. So I have a broken finger from chili.
Oh my goodness. Look, Lydia, we're getting pretty close to calling an end to it, and I've really had a great time tonight just talking to you, and I hope that everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have. And I'd just like to remind everyone that we're here to support Impact, and whilst there's no obligation, one of the projects that we're involved in is a court childcare support, which is operating out of Moorabbin at the moment, Moorabbin Court, because there's one day a week where the parent has to attend in order to support their application for an AVO. And quite often, there's nowhere to take the children, there's no one to take the children. And apart from the fact that it's pretty horrendous for the parent to be going through all this, it's pretty horrendous for the child too. So together with a number of refuges and organisations, Impact came up with a plan and we established the childcare centre at Moorabbin Court, which is staffed by fully trained childcare workers so that the child can be there with other children, looked after by trained carers. Now, it's a great idea. It costs a bit to set up. It costs money to run. So if you would like, anyone would like to donate today to that cause, you'll find the link. Cassie can give you the link at the end, or it's definitely on Impact's Facebook page and on their website. So we'd really love it if you could do that. We've covered a whole range of things, Lydia, a whole range of things. When you're in Canberra, if you need, I can give you the name of a really good op shop. But I understand that your partner is a minimalist.
Oh. Yes, he is. And I have a lot of shoes. So between my partner being a minimalist and my dog loving shoes, I've actually had to lose a lot. So
I understand that completely. I understand.
But a lot of most of my Parliament wear is from the op shop. So I had, very well dressed, very privileged MPs, female MPs, come to me in the Victorian Parliament saying how lovely I was dressed and had my shoes, and they were all from the op shop.
Sometimes you find the absolute best things. Okay, last question, if I may. What are your portfolios again for the Greens?
So First Nations, justice and sport.
I can see a lot more discussion on treaty and the odd netball game, I sincerely hope.
Yeah, we'll see. The body's getting I had a knee reconstruction through netball. I've got broken finger now. I don't know. The body's starting to feel it.
Lydia, thank you very much. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you tonight. Cassie, if I could hand back to you now. I hope you've all had as much fun as I've had. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Oh, what a treat we've just had. Really, it was a terrific conversation. We learnt so much about you. Apart from being a politician, we uncovered the real woman, and that's what I love about you, that how open you are. And, I better put it out there. This is not a political statement. We are non-political here. We're interested in real people, real conversations, real stories, and that's what we had. Lydia, there was so much that you said that I just resonated so wonderfully with me individually, but with Impact as well. Community is the running thread through your life, isn't it? And doing something for community. And that's exactly what Impact is. If we don't stand up and look after each other, then what sort of a society are we? It just kept coming through and through. I loved the story that you told us about training the youngsters for their cross country and how you stopped part way at the cemetery and teaching them about respect. This is part of every day. Go and say thank you, go and say hello, and then let's keep going. That, as I was telling you before, with the youngsters that we have coming to help us at Impact, it's teaching them about volunteerism, teaching them respect, teaching them care and concern for community. You also spoke about that difficult time in your life, and you said something there that I had to write down, that you mentioned you had your mental health, your children were healthy and safe, and all you lost was material. And how many people actually think that way? So many people, too many people, think it's the things they have that matter. And it's not, is it? It's family, its friends, its community, and caring for each other. And you were worried about not being able to be on the boards to continue your communal care. You're an exceptional woman, you really are. When you then said, you talked about that you were getting a lot of crap, really, when you were saying things, people labeling you a troublemaker, this and that still happens, doesn't it? Sadly, that especially with women, but not only with women, that when we stand up for something we believe in, we're actually criticised for doing something good. Now, I don't know who said it because it's attributed to a whole stack of people. They say Marilyn Monroe said it, they say Eleanor Roosevelt, Anne Boleyn, Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. But the quote is, well-behaved women rarely make history. Now, I'm not saying you were misbehaved in any shape or form, but for many people, speaking out is misbehaving. And we need to change that. We need to change that. And you're going to make history for a whole stack of really, really good reasons. The only other thing I wrote here that I really wanted to say was, I love how you reordered treaty, voice and constitution and Uluru Statement. And I think that's a really important lesson for us, not just in terms of that, but in many things in our life. It's how we order our priorities. And that order can make all the difference in the long-term outcome. Lidia, it's been a real privilege having you. Thank you so, so much for being here, for sharing your story, sharing yourself. It's been amazing. Now, in 2 weeks' time, we've got another Impact Chat, and we're going to be having a chat with Bram Presser. Now, he's best known for being the front man of a punk rock group, Yidcore, while he was also I'm not sure if he was a solicitor or a barrister, but he was in court in front of judges with dreadlocks, the whole bit. He looks scary. He's a big teddy bear. And he's also now an amazing author. And his first book, The Book of Dirt, has won many, many awards. So we're really looking forward to chatting with him in 2 weeks' time. Friends, until then, please stay safe, stay home, stay well. And to the Jewish people who are here online, Shana Tova, may the new year bring us all many, many moments of sweetness, certainly far more than the past year has brought us. And with that, I just want to say thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thanks, Lidia and Sue. Keep well, people.
Thank you for having me, and stay connected.
That's a promise.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.